All right, let's get this rolling. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, especially our corporate partners, representatives, and all the students. You know, normally to get students, we just offer some food and they show up, but tonight we have food and jobs, which apparently it worked. This, as if you are blind and haven't seen the posters all over the building and campus, is the first of a three-part series on our job fair. And the first thing I want to point out is that this job fair was essentially organized by our students, and they've done a tremendous job, you know, as our students always do. But we appreciate them putting this together, and I think it'll mean a lot to all of you who are attending here. So the 6 companies that are represented up here are really part of the 17 companies that will be here for the job fair. And as I said, this is the first event where we're going to talk about, you know, job searching skills, resumes, interviewing, follow-ups, and things like that. And you get a chance to talk to some people and ask some questions by individuals that really know what they're looking for and how to kind of make yourself stand out a little bit in the crowd. So that's important. And then on the 15th, on Wednesday, we'll be following up with a little reception, which is kind of a relaxed setting where you can kind of get to talk to representatives from various companies and get to know them. And then finally, the culminating events on Thursday the 16th from 1 to 6 in our lobby, where you'll actually get down to business and talk about internships and jobs. So hopefully this will continue. This is the first, and I guess I always love being part of the first. It's got a nice ring to it. You know, in the college we take placing students pretty seriously, because what we will be known for as a college and an institution are the people that graduate from here and go out and are successful. So, you know, it's kind of our promise to you is that we'll do everything we can to place you, and since we're really here for economic development, the community wanted us here as a college, and so, you know, we support that economic development by placing you where you can do the best job for the community and for yourself. So with that, I think we'll get started here. I know we've got a limited amount of time, and you want to hear from these people, so let me introduce our panel, and I will work from left to right from your angle. And first we have Clarice Rogers of Cameron. And next we got Laura Nick of Garver. And we've got Allison Nicholas from Axiom, Carrie Anderson from Dillard's, Jonathan Siemens from CDI Construction, and finally Bill Russell from Molex. And the panel will essentially be overseen by our MCs tonight, who are Shanoa Miller and Logan Ware. And so I will turn it over to them, and we'll get started. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got a big week coming up, leading into next Thursday, which is our career fair. Most of us here are potential employees and applicants to lots of the great industries that surround our area and beyond. So to start us off, Carrie, we would like you to fill us in on the first impression. You know, we've got a meet and greet coming up, and of course the career fair. You know, what should we wear? How should we stand? How should we communicate?
Well, I just recently got back from recruiting last week, so this is pretty fresh on my mind. Basically, as far as the career fair is concerned, and I'm going to speak of this personally, and I'll let them speak up if they want to, but really do some research on how the position you're interviewing for or potentially seeking out, how they dress. We're business casual, so I don't expect you to show up in a suit and tie, because that's not what we wear on a normal basis. But it does make a good first impression. So if you're wanting to stand out for sure, that's something you want to do. Also, handshakes, nothing really limp, which you see it a lot. So make sure you make good eye contact, a real strong handshake. If the career fair is something that you're not going to be able to make sure that if you sign up for an interview, that you at least reach out. I have times where I have students who sign up for interviews, but I never hear from them until the day of the interview. And so that, to me, makes me feel like they're not making an effort. So an effort can be another way of being a good first impression. And I don't want to step on their toes, but resumes also are a good first impression. I've had students ask me, well, what do you think about a GPA? And to me, I use that as a first impression. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to, mark you off if it's low or, give you an A+ if it's really high, but it is a first impression. So make sure that if that's something that you're wanting to lead with, that you put it on your resume. Basically, handshakes, eye contact, dress appropriately, wear socks to interviews. And that's about it for me.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think in a mixer, you should come like you're going to I guess like a business cocktail party, I guess is what I would kind of think of it. And that means that if you were going to a business cocktail party, I would not think that you bring a backpack. You might bring a portfolio or something to have a resume or several copies of resume in. But it is a business meeting, even in a casual setting.
I would be prepared with an elevator speech because you're going to meet several people that night, that evening, and you want to be able to have some key things you want to say to each employer about yourself. It's kind of like telling your story in a very brief time period, so have an elevator speech that you can say, hi, Allison, my name is Jane Smith, and I'm a computer science major here at UALR. I'm graduating in May, and I'm really looking for opportunities to intern before I graduate. I do have some interest in graduate school, so I'm really excited to hear that Axiom has an educational reimbursement program. So show you've done your homework. And I have several friends who are interns at Axiom. I mean, you kind of let it flow, but just basically it's your story in a short, concise period of time that you're ready to talk about. It should be very easy. It just kind of fall off your tongue, basically. Just a little bit about you and what you're looking for. Why are you here talking to me at the reception or at the career fair or on campus interviews? What kind of position are you looking for? Just be ready for a short synopsis of how we can help you, how we can categorize you in a meaningful way to help you find the next step with the company.
And I would say, as far as the process goes from the beginning, where you're making your first impressions, to the end, when we talk about follow-up, modesty and moderation are kind of the key. That goes from colognes and perfumes to makeup to clothing. Just take that into consideration. Revealing clothing, tight clothing, inappropriate levels of dress. Think about how comfortable you're going to be in stiletto heels if someone decides to take you on a tour somewhere. Just common sense approach whenever you're making that first impression.
That's a great recommendation. And I agree, we do take our candidates many times on tours, so being comfortable. Axiom is a blue jean business casual environment, so I wouldn't recommend that you come in business casual when you interview. I recommend that if you're coming to an on-site interview, that you do wear a suit because you're making a first impression. Now, if you're hired, you're going to be able to wear blue jeans every day. But if you come to Axiom for an interview, people are going to interview you are probably going to have on basically blue jeans and a khaki or something like that. But you be prepared for a more formal introduction. Be comfortable. And I don't want you to have to go out and spend $1 million on a suit, but come in prepared with a portfolio, come in with extra copies of your resume, and come in professionally dressed and ready to talk about what interests you. Do your homework, and don't hesitate to network with people who you may know who work at the company. It's all great preparation. And
don't forget your electronic devices. Smart thing is to put them in your car and not even bring them in with you. There's nothing worse than having a phone that's been put on vibrate and you can hear it throughout the whole interview. Smartest thing is just not to bring it in at all. And I meant to ask you all, does the campus here have a Dress for Success program? A lot of campuses do.
I believe so.
Don't have one?
No, I don't believe we do.
Okay. You might check into that. A lot of the larger campuses do, and it makes professional attire available to students. It's a nonprofit organization. People donate their dress clothes, and it's a great way to have a wardrobe on a student's budget.
Also, did you?
Yeah. I was going to stick into the wardrobe a little bit. One of the things you were talking about dress for success. One of the things you can do is just watch Fox News or CNN. How do they dress? That's the way you should come to the interview. Nice dress, nice business suit, nice tie. Remember the tie, not too flashy. The dean over here, his tie is a little bit on the flashy side. And the other thing is, you might want to stand in front of the mirror before you come to the interview and make sure you took the tags off of your new clothes. I know that's a little bit of a style, but not for a job interview. Remember, we're ready to go. It's very interesting, the number of limp handshakes. I mean, go in there and get a good, firm handshake. Not too much, don't squeeze my hand, right? But it's just a good, firm handshake. Practice. Mm-hmm. That helps. I mean, practice among yourselves. Hey, how you doing? Good, firm handshake. And definitely the cell phones. Leave the cell phone in the rental car. Leave the cell phone in the car. Don't even bring it in the building. Just a couple of days ago, we were interviewing a candidate for a double E job. The guy's got 20 years of experience. His phone rings. What does he do? He answers it. So yeah. I'm not so sure that. I turned mine off too.
I haven't turned mine off yet.
We're going to get the resumes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll hold the resume thing.
All right, Allison. So
One
One more comment.
Go ahead.
Another first impression that is a little sneaky is we're all observers, and you observe people in a crowd, and so you are always interviewing if you're in the presence of an interviewer, whether you're actually talking to the interviewer or not, and you are seeing on how you might be interacting with your fellow students. Also, how do you feel about folks that monopolize your time and are not considerate of others? That again is also a very, a first impression that signifies somebody that's just not very aware of their surroundings.
That's great. That's great discussion. So, say I didn't do very good in my first impression. Allison, what can I put in my resume that when you go to the office Friday after the career fair, what's going to change your mind?
Well, let's talk a little bit about the purpose of the resume first. Typically in an on-campus interview, you're going to have about 30 minutes to make an impression on the recruiter, which will then catapult you hopefully to either a phone interview or an on-site interview, right? And so usually on-site interviews are typically 45 minutes to an hour. And you may interview with multiple people, but typically it could be anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. So I want you to think about how much time you spend with a recruiter, and then what is the quality of the conversation? Because it's very easy to say, I'm going to go in and interview with Axiom, I'm going to go in and interview with this company, but I care about the quality of the information on your resume, because that then determines how much time a recruiter or a hiring manager has to spend pulling all that information out of you, okay? So if you write a resume that has key information, standardized stuff that you normally would think about, your education, please emphasize when you're graduating and what your GPA is, because we're going to ask that question. And make sure your resume is always up to date, and that we have the most up-to-date copy of your resume. Many times we'll get resumes that have been on profile in our system, and it may be an antiquated resume that we're utilizing. So make sure you always interview for preparation that we have the most up-to-date copy of your resume, and that should happen before the interview and then during the interview, because things could change. You may have something that you want to add or increase. So let's say that on your resume you have you don't have anything about the projects that you've done, because as a student you bring to the table great information about your your work history, your internships, your co-op experience, maybe summer jobs, maybe academic research, camps you've been involved with, research projects you've done. But a lot of your experience is going to come from your academic coursework, your team-based projects. So make sure you do include or be prepared to talk about your team-based projects, because we can spend a lot of time delving into what they were, and you're trying to figure out which ones do I want to share, and then it takes a lot of time. But if you put a summary of your projects on your resume, we can very quickly go to the projects that may interest us. And I see that, oh, this is a team-based project where you designed a database using Oracle and SQL, MySQL, and PLSQL. I'm looking for that skill, so I'm going to spend more time on that particular project. So when you write a resume, remember, it's who you are when you're not there. So what do you want the recruiter to know about you? What are the hiring manager? What do you want them to know about you? Make sure it just stands up off the page. Because when I get a basic resume that has just basic, name and address, where you work, that type of information, and not much content about what you did on the job, I've spent a lot of time saying, did you use Excel? Did you do any programming? What kind of programming did you do? What kind of languages did you do? Did you use Linux? So I have to ask a lot of probing questions where that information should be obvious. Okay, so you did an internship at Axiom, and you were a software developer. Well, you're going to use probably C, C++, Java, maybe some C#, maybe some Unix. So if you're writing a description to explain an internship to another employer, hopefully to one of our hiring managers to move into a full-time job role, you want to be obvious about your skill set and communicate that in a bullet format. So it's very easy to read, it's very easy to flow through the information. I'm an advocate of having a resume that speaks to your experience. If you need a one-page resume, that's great. But if you need a two-page resume, I'm not opposed to that at all, okay? So I wouldn't go over 2 pages, but if you have enough information and you're constantly cutting information out of your resume, and I'm only getting just a thumbnail of what your background is, I want to see the content. I want to see what you did in those internships. I want to see what you did in the research that you've accomplished and your work history. So make sure that you do spend time building it out instead of cutting it back, because you're going to spend too much time in that 45 minutes to an hour to 30 minutes explaining it all again. So be concerned about your content. Make sure the content matches the job you're applying for. Now let's talk about resumes for career fairs and resumes for a specific job. When you go to a career fair, you're going to have a quick conversation with an employer more than likely. But that resume is going to be taken back and looked at time and time again. So make sure that the resume is well written, that it reflects most of your skill set, and because most of your technical students write a resume toward a technical job. And you can always, whenever you apply again, you'll apply online more than likely, or you'll apply through your on-campus system. So make sure the recruiter that you're interviewing with gets the final copy of what you want them to see, if that makes sense. So I do recommend that you look at your resume and build it based on what you need, what you're most proud of, what represents you the best. And that's a one-page resume, that's great, but make sure all the content's there. If it's a 2-page resume and you only have about a page and 3/4, add your references at the bottom. There's all sorts of ways to do that. But remember, your resume is all about representing you and your skill set. Write it as a skill-based tool. Today it's about being found, really, because you're going to be found on LinkedIn, you're going to be found in lots of different ways. So make sure your online profile is just as efficient as your paper profile.
How do you feel about cover letters?
Me?
Yes. I'm sorry, that was just a question.
I do pay attention to cover letters, but whenever I see most resumes, they're coming to me online. And so I'll go through the cover letter really quickly, but I go for the resume. Yeah. I really pay most attention to the resume. If the cover letter has an Axiom Associate's name or a leader's name or a specific type of thing they want me to know, it helps tell their story. I'm looking to see, what is the student's story? Who are they? What job roles are they interested in? So when I get to the resume, it makes more sense to me. But I go straight to that resume most of the time, with the cover letter, but I'm spending most of my time on the resume.
To me, in answer to your question, as far as cover letters go, I think cover letters are a great tool for anything that we need to know that's out of the ordinary. You're interested in relocating to a specific city because your family's back there. Or, like she said, there are different things about every individual. Maybe you're from another country, but you're documented and certified to work in the United States, and you want to make that clear up front. Those are the kind of things that I think a cover letter is great for, but if all you're going to say is, I think my skill sets are a perfect match for you in this position that you're trying to fill, and I would love to come work for your company, I have great energy and enthusiasm, that's the kind of stuff that we set to the side, I can tell you, as an HR professional. When you're looking at hundreds of resumes, don't bother with a cover letter if that's the message, because we know that because you applied for the job and did your resume and took the time to do that.
But I will say to that, if you also just send me your resume in an email, why am I going to open your resume? You need to invite me to want to read your resume if you just send it as an attachment. So even if it's one paragraph, again, what these ladies said, telling me why that you're special and I should read you, I need some explanation versus all the resumes I'm going to get today. So it's all about making it customized. So if you're going to apply to all 6 of these companies, you should be sending out 6 different messages and 6 different resumes specific to all of us. And
big mistake is to send me a resume that's got her company's name on it.
Right. Yeah. Yes, or to get a job at Dillard's when you're applying for a job at Axiom. That's.
So one thing to look at is, at the beginning as students, you're not going to have a long resume, fit it on one page. But as your career progresses, you're going to get job number 2 and job number 3, is to think about the couple types of resumes that you're going to send out to us. There's 2 types. There's a chronological resume. You list things in chronological history. When did you get your degree? What day was your first job? What day was your second job? And then there's that functional resume. For me, I like to see a chronological resume. List that first job, and then in a couple paragraphs, tell me what you did. Highlight those key points. Make those things jump out at the page. Did you measure insertion loss? Put it down. What frequency did you? Put it down. You wrote in VB? Put it down. The next job, what did you do? Responsible for this and responsible for that. After you read it a little while, it looks like American literature, right? No. Cut out the literature. Focus in on the key topics of what you did at that job. Now, we also talk about 1 page versus 2 pages versus 3 pages. You're going to have to make a decision, how long you want to keep your resume. Obviously, I'm going to look at your most recent job. What did you do? What can you do for me? And those things are going to pop off the page very quickly. What can you do for me in your most recent job? But then I may have to search back to the job before that, or maybe the 3rd job, to find out what can you do for me today. But after a while, maybe the job's 5 years old. Maybe you have a job 5 times below. So now instead of adding another page to the resume, just cut out some of those words and just kind of put some of the buzzwords in there, right? TCL, TDR, IL, RL, just the buzzwords, right? So now you can kind of keep your resume down. I don't know, I see 7-page resumes, and I kind of quit reading them after page 1 or page 2. So yeah, the other pages are just kind of fluff. The other thing that happens, though, is you're going to get some awards. All of you guys probably have an award or 2 already. You're going to take some special things in class. Maybe you took a statistics class, right? Maybe you took a nonlinear dynamics class just because you wanted to, right? Well, where are you going to hide that in your resume where it pops off? Well, maybe that's that 4th page that you stick in there, right? And please do one more favor for me. Save the space that says references available upon request. I already know that, right? You're going to just go ahead and give me your references, right? Or I'm going to use a background service check that, check your Facebook, check your credit rating. I'm going to use these background services. Just save the text. Just don't put that on there. It's like, I already know this.
Relevant experience as a student. I think one way to think about a resume might also be a discussion starter in your interview. So you really want to think through what's on your resume as it relates to your storytelling or telling your story in an interview. In construction, I remember interviewing a fellow up in Illinois who was very embarrassed that his resume did not have any actual construction experience on it. But when I asked him about the job that he held for 6 years while going to school, and the small family that he supported, and how he was able to move from a mechanic into managing a store and tell that story, I became very interested in the fellow. Because that showed me that that individual was a self-starter, was able to show that they were able to handle many different responsibilities concurrently, that the owner in that business had confidence to promote them and give them opportunity, which are all the things that I'm looking for. And so don't be embarrassed about the types of experience you have, but just put it down in a manner that you can tell a story that accentuates the positive qualities that you have.
Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. That was great advice. Jonathan, to add on to what you were saying, after the career fair, you've met us, you've had our first impressions, and you have our resume, and we get called into an interview. What kind of preparation or advice would you give for someone for preparing for that interview? I believe Allison earlier talked about if you know what job that you're applying for and you know that your senior thesis relates completely to it, is it okay to bring your senior thesis with you to the interview? What kind of advice would you give, or research also, should that person do?
I think you're right. It's kind of been touched on a little bit all the way through. Before the research question, I think one of the more important things you can do is just practice. And I think it's also okay, although I would never want anybody to waste my time, but the reality is that you may have 4 or 5 or 6 interviewing opportunities, and I would take them all. And then I would go to the one you really want last, and use those as practice sessions. And every time you get out of an interview, debrief yourself and keep notes and critique on what you did well, what stories seemed to resonate with the individual that you were talking to, where did they try and dive deeper into the details, what popped off the resume that they saw, where did they go, and kind of debrief yourself as you prepare for the next interview. I think above all, that's really if I was to say what the most important thing you could do is, I think that's the most important thing, is really to just practice. Because then you'll figure out what research you should have done that you didn't do. You'll figure out what question, or when they ask you, so did you, what's a common question that is asked? Do you have any further questions? That's always, and it's like, no, I think you answered all my questions. Is that the right answer? I don't know. Is that the right answer?
No.
No. I didn't think so. As far as research goes, I would expect that if it is on the website, you would have memorized it. I would expect that you will also have done keyword searches on the company to find relevant news clips and sound bites that you can find. It's always nice to have someone come in and say, Jonathan Siemens, I'm really glad to meet you. When I was preparing for the interview today, I saw that you were the manager at the Clinton Library. That just must have been a fantastic opportunity for you. And you can find out all kinds of information just even on a name search if you know who your interviewer is going to be. Be early. Give yourself plenty of time. If you're rushed, it shows. It's a business meeting. I think in your preparation and in leaving yourself plenty of time, leave the backpack or whatever else you have at home or in wherever you leave things these days, in your car, and come with only the items that you need to have for that interview. What other notes did I have down here? This is in the preparing, right? You're not actually in the interview, is that correct? Okay. Trying to stay on task here.
If anyone else would like to add anything, we can go straight into the interview process.
I would like to add maybe just a couple of things in the preparation process. Certainly I agree with researching the company, talking to people that you know, friends and family who may work for that company, find out more that way. Go to LinkedIn. If you know you're going to interview with me, I have a full profile on LinkedIn. Go out there and take a look at my background and get a better sense of the things that interest me. We'll let you know in advance who you're going to be interviewing with and what job role. So, do your homework. Look at the job description. Have a copy of the description when you go to the interview. Make sure that you are comfortable in the clothing you're going to wear to that interview. Make sure you sit down and move around, and so nothing is going to pop off or move around that's uncomfortable. I mean, sometimes those suits can make you look like little turtles, I would also just make sure that if you're going to bring a portfolio of some sort, if you have some examples of your work you want to share, remember, it's a great thing to do, by the way, but you should be willing to leave that copy, so make a copy that the interviewers can keep. Remember that you have a limited amount of time in an interview, so make sure that you may want to reference it as something like, if you're interviewing with me for a database role and you have some examples of things you want to share with me, bring one or two maybe, max. If you have a full portfolio, I mean, you'll take too much time trying to flip through it to share with me the information. So know the job well enough to bring some examples of your work, and then be prepared to leave whatever that is, typically just small examples. That you can share and I can look at later, or I can share with the hiring leader. But just don't bring a lot of stuff. It's just going to probably stress you out, and we won't have enough time to get to it, and that will also stress you out. In preparing for the interview, a lot of people get confused that we have multiple locations. So sometimes interviews take place in Little Rock, sometimes they're in Conway. So make sure you specify not only where you're going, but where you're going to park and how you're going to get there. And a lot of people, many times have people drop them off and pick them back up, and that's no problem with us. So sometimes people even stay there with the individual because they are providing transportation. It's not a problem at all. It's just you need to be prepared to notify the recruiter of that situation, so that if that person's staying for 2 hours and that person's in our environment, we can look for ways to provide a tour or do something with them that's meaningful. Some people bring their spouses. It just depends on what the situation is, but you want to make sure that that you plan with the recruiter your trip to that location, and that you bring the resources that are going to be most meaningful to you. Make sure you always bring extra copies of your resume. Make sure you bring a list of questions you want to ask the interviewees. Write down a list, bring a portfolio, and write down a list of questions you want to ask. Now, if you've gone through the interview and you've asked questions and you get to the end and we say, is there anything else you'd like to know? And you can say, honestly, I've gone through my list of questions, but show me that you have a list of questions there, that you have done enough to think about, that you've actually prepared a list of questions for the interview. And actually you'll be interviewing with probably more than just one person, so using that same list probably over and over again is probably a really good idea. Don't be afraid to say the same thing to each team when you're interviewing. Don't be afraid to share the information again and again, because it's going to be basically they're looking to confirm that you said the same thing. They're looking for consensus. So I feel like I'm moving too much into interviewing right now, but I just think preparation is the key. It's always the key.
Right. Thank you. So as we were saying, we come to one of the most, I know for me, one of the most stressful and anxiety, but most important part of the job application process, and that's the interview. Laura, what advice would you give someone to overcome those known anxieties and how to provide themselves and how to succeed in an interview?
Excuse me, I'm going to jump back, because I think one thing that we haven't touched on too much that I really do a lot before I even call you for an interview is I Google you. So whatever you got out there, just make sure it's under control and nice. Because we really do. And, all of our hiring managers, they'll be like today, somebody's like, hey, can you do some detective work on this guy? Sure. I'm going to try to find everything I can about you to make sure that you can be an ambassador for our company. So I sure don't care what sites that you're on. Just make sure you're doing nice things on those sites. That's how you're going to get to, or not get to an interview. When you get to an interview, I sure don't want to beat a dead horse, but let me paint a little picture. So at Garver, we have a couple of floors, and I'm on the top floor, and so when front desk calls and says, hey, Laura, so-and-so's here, okay, great. So I got to run down the stairs, I got to open a set of double doors, and then our little lobby area is right there. So what do I want? You're probably the only person sitting there. You know that you've probably looked at me on LinkedIn too. You probably checked me out on Facebook, whatever. So you know what I look like. So what I want you to do is get up and greet me. And we've all said it together. Let me see some handshakes here. Stand up. Hey, Laura. Nice to meet you. I'm so-and-so. I know we've all talked about it, but seriously, that makes such a 75% is the first 5 minutes to me of how long this interview is going to go and what we're going to talk about. I think we've all talked about how to get ready for it. I think sometimes the questions is perfect. What Allison said. One of my favorite questions that I get that I know you really are interested in working for us is, well, tell me why you like Garver. How long have you been at Garver? You know, tell me what you did today. What are some of your responsibilities? Because I know, hey, they're thinking ahead. They want to be this hiring manager in 10 years and 15 years. So even if it's not a real technical question or specific question, make it a people question. You know, what did you do? What kind of projects do you work on? And I definitely try to get our team to talk about that stuff up front, but that shows me that you're really interested. On the flip side, don't give me TMI. I don't want too much information that we don't ask you about. Like, I don't really care if your kid ate Donald's today, you know, like, just come in, be professional, give me the basics, answer the questions, be personable, laugh, relax, but don't overshare. I think that's where I kind of like, yeah, I don't know if I could work with her every day. You know what I mean? So otherwise, just relax and be yourself. And I think all the other things we've kind of beat on that you can be successful in an interview. It may take a couple of times to get there, but just keep on smiling.
I'd like to add a couple of comments about team interviews because you're going to have team interviews pretty much wherever you go. Mm-hmm. And some important things to keep in mind is that, let's say that the student over here on the front row, she is the team leader, and we've got someone over here that's the hiring leader. We've got some people in the audience that are, or in the same role you're interviewing for. Don't forget that they're all important. So you make sure you make eye contact with this individual over here and then also with her and then with them and all of you out there because, you want them to feel like they're important because they are. They're making a determination about you. So, make sure you do shake their hand. Make sure that they understand that you're interested in them. And I recommend all of you, if you're interested in that job, tell them that you're interested in that job. Talk about where you are in your job search. I mean, I realize you don't want to overshare because there's some things you want to keep confidential, but, tell them you want the job. Tell them you're interested in the company. Tell them you're impressed. I mean, we want to hear that you're excited about the organization because we've got to determine who we're going to hire. And I'd rather hire someone who's super pumped up about the company, who wants the job, who's tried really hard to prepare for a job with our company. So, interviewing is about really you're ready to make a decision, and we're ready to make a decision. We want to make sure that you want us, and that you've done a lot to prepare for that. And that you see yourself long-term at our company and that you're not going to be a job hopper. Because we spend a lot of money in the first year alone just investing in you, training you, helping you collaborate. So we want to make sure we bring you into the right job role where you're going to be successful and grow your career, and you're going to be a hiring manager, you're going to be the next CEO, So be prepared. Look deeply. Ask tons of questions. When you're on the tour, look to see what people are wearing. Are they happy? What's going on in the company? Do you see yourself fitting in? That's really important.
It's important to listen to the questions that are being asked of you. You may have prepared, and I think it is a good idea. There are some standard questions that just kind of tend to come across, and you should have good answers for those already prepared. You should not be thinking on the cuff of how do I answer that question. Often you may have questions that don't really have answers, or good answers, or easy answers. And in those situations, you just need to be honest, to the point, right or wrong. And it's okay to show maybe your insecurity in your response or your maybe lack of knowledge in a specific subject, but you need to answer the question. The worst answer is a 5-minute answer on why you cannot answer the question. And that's really that's a good way to have that interviewer just kind of forget about you already. So just be pointed, answer the questions. Don't worry about being wrong. There's often not a wrong answer. It's really about trying to draw you out and see how you communicate.
Well, don't be afraid to say, can you say that a different way? Or I don't understand what you're asking me. Can I ask you to repeat the question or to ask for some help either? Like you said, there's probably not a wrong answer.
Well, and I see a lot of times where they'll turn around and ask me to confirm that that's what, like, it's like they're wanting me to kind of start the answer for them. And so it's okay to breathe for a minute, you know, say, let me think about this for a second. You know, we're not expecting you to pop it off, like, right, just, I don't know, I find people trying to get me to answer questions for them. And really, I mean, I can try and help you, but the more I lead you into an answer, it becomes an answer I led you into and not an honest answer. And also, I have my typical question, what is it about Dillard's that interests you? And I get a lot of, I'm just looking for a job. And so that goes back to the research, and I know you all want jobs. I mean, we all want jobs, but just make sure you understand the position you're interviewing for and why that actually interests you, because I would hope that you're interviewing because it interests you, not because it's just a job opening.
Sorry, go ahead.
And one of the other things, too, is that, you know, we as interviewers, we usually have a list of things that we want to know. And so we're going to ask question number 1. Obviously, there's 3, 4, 5, and 6 to go to answer the question, but somewhere you got to stop, you know. And, you know, there's a vast amount of knowledge that you're going to have, and, you know, then, you know, don't go around the circle. Try to get to the answer. You know, don't talk about your Aunt Mary and your cruise to the Bahamas to answer how you set up for insertion loss, right? Answer how we set up for insertion loss. And kind of focus on that. But kind of once you feel you got the question answered, stop. Because I want to go on to the next question. And the next question, and the next question. So,
I would just say, one thing to remember before you get all bundled up in nerves, and everybody does when you're out there starting the interview process, is to remember that really an interview is a conversation. Yes, we're trying to determine which of you is the best fit for the jobs that we have available. But you should be equally determined to find the very best employer and the very best position that fits your skills, your personality, your career wants and needs. So we can't have, a dialogue can't be one way. You're not going to an interview just to answer questions and be done. You need to probe, and you need to research, and you need to ask questions as well, because it's just as important that you feel comfortable coming to work for me as it is that I feel comfortable bringing you into our organization.
I'd also like for you to recognize that there are screening interviews, one screening would happen at a career fair. One screening might happen at, you're doing an introduction. A true screening interview might be over the phone or on campus. You might sit down for 30 minutes and do a screening interview. And that's where you meet the criteria for various types of job roles. And the recruiter recommends you for other opportunities, and they send your resume out to different teams, and the teams determine that they want to interview you. And that's more than likely going to be a more technical interview than the initial interview you had with the recruiter. And you're going to get some technical questions that may overwhelm you, may make you feel uncomfortable, you may feel like you don't know how to answer that question, but it's really how you answer that question that's most important. They're not doing that to make you uncomfortable. They're trying to figure out what is the skills that this individual really has, how are we going to mentor and train this individual to be successful at Axiom, and to what extent is their skill set. So it's perfectly fine to say, I don't have any experience in C#. However, I have had some exposure in other languages, and I've been challenged to learn new languages on several projects I've worked on. So I feel confident, given the opportunity, I can learn C#. But it's okay also to say, I haven't had the opportunity. I'd be glad to do that. But in other words, it's perfectly fine to say I don't know. But if you have some examples that are transferable, go ahead and share it. But don't let a question that's a little bit over your head or maybe more technical than what you feel like you're prepared for overwhelm you. Just answer to the best of your ability, and don't go around in a circle. You just keep on trying to figure out how to answer it. Just say, start off by saying, I just don't have any exposure to that tool, but I have some transferable skill from these other projects. If you have any questions about those, please let me know. Don't be intimidated by that. They're just doing it to help you, really.
Okay, Clarice, now there's a little bit of confusion. All right, so the interview's over after the heart rate slows down a little bit. We don't really know how to follow up, What do you prefer to see? Is it a letter? Is it an email? What would you like to see?
It goes back to my first comment, which was moderation. And it's really easy to let your nerves take over and get real anxious because you're waiting to hear from 3 or 4 different employers. And pretty soon you're calling and you're emailing and you're sending letters, and then you're calling again to make sure somebody got the email or the letter. Moderation. And my personal feeling is, and everybody on this panel may have a different feeling, I don't care if it's a phone call or an email or a handwritten letter. I don't place any special value on a handwritten letter over an email. I don't place a special value over an email versus a handwritten note. But reach out to me one time, and that goes a long way. Reach out to me 2 times, I'm sitting on the fence. Reach out to me 3 times, and I guarantee you I'm looking at other candidates because I really feel like I'm being pressed and badgered, and I don't have the time to devote to that many phone calls and letters. And I don't mean that in a rude sense. If you get into an HR field ever and you get into recruiting, no kidding, there are some positions that you get 3 and 4 and 500 resumes for. And yes, you only interview a small portion of those people, but you might interview 40 or 50 if you're going to a campus event for sure. So just, again, it goes back to taking other people's time into consideration. We will get back to you. The process sometimes takes 4 to 6 weeks, even in some cases longer. And I hate that because I don't like waiting either. But just think about the moderation rule and don't underdo it. It doesn't do you any good to turn in your resume and never do the interview and then never try to reach out to somebody and ask how that went. You're not setting yourself apart at that point. But 3 and 4 different contact points or trying to contact multiple people in the organization can sometimes set some people off and leave a bad taste and have them move on to other candidates as well.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly, except if you have a change in status, for instance, that's going to make you a different candidate. If you passed your FE or, you're now a different, I'm sure there's all kinds of certifications for UIT people. So if that's going to change your status and make me look at you a little bit differently, then let me know. Even if it's been a little while, just say, just want to let you know, pass this exam, great. And then I can kind of put you in a different bucket of people that I'm considering.
Agreed.
And I think every recruiter is really different, and everybody's job scope is different. My full-time job is college recruiting, university relations, and the internship program. That's my job. And not everybody has the luxury of doing that, being only a recruiter. There are a lot of them that do hiring. Your recruiters are all different. Some of them are actually hiring managers that are on campus participating in a career fair, but their real job is to be a developer. So make sure you understand what the scope of that individual is, So I spend all my time with college students. It's what I prefer to do. It's what I want to do. And so, that's just a difference in personality and in job role. So everybody's unique. So make sure you get to know your recruiter well and understand their personalities and what their needs are and how they approach the job search, because we're all really different. And it's because of job scope and the amount of time we spend. And I have some recruiters that are dedicated only to certain schools. There's just all kinds of ways in which we operate.
Okay, thank you very much. So after our interview and whatnot, and we get an awesome offer, yay, and we didn't get acceptance. Bill, what advice would you give someone making that transition from being a student in academic life and then going into the industry world?
Oh, it's a long discussion, isn't it? So really, seriously, what do we want, right? So we got our first job. What do we want? We want stability in our job. In about a year or so, we're going to what? Want a raise, all right? So how do we get that? How do we get there? Well, one of the first things is we kind of need to take control. We need to take control of our job. What do we need to be doing? And it's pretty well going to be defined. Your hiring manager is going to set out and say, here's the things that you need to be doing. Here's your goals for the year. Here's your ratings. You're kind of going to know what you're going to do, right? We need to take control. Just like in school, you want to stand out, right? We all want that A. We all want to stand out and get that scholarship. We all want to stand out and get that award. Same thing in the job field, right? Just a little bit different. So you're designing a circuit, you're doing some testing, you're programming, and you look over and on the test bench right here is another piece of equipment, but you haven't been touching it. Nothing says that you can't stay late, you can't come in on the weekend, get the manual, learn how to use it. Oh, wow, all of a sudden now you've added some ability that you didn't have before. And all of a sudden your manager sees, wow, he's using this piece of equipment. You just stood out. You just took control, all right? The other thing is we all have to communicate. We're going to communicate in emails. We're going to communicate in meetings like this forum. Today we just don't have any PowerPoint slides, but trust me, we've got PowerPoint slides, right? We have Excel. We have Word. We're going to have to write reports. We're going to have to use English, you know, whether we're here or in Japan or China or Mexico, we're all going to communicate in English. It's not bad if you can speak a little Chinese, right? But we got to use the tools. We have to use email. We have to use PowerPoint. We have to use Excel. Think about how your presentation's going to look. Stand out. Don't make it too flashy. Remember, we're a bunch of engineers in a room, or we're a bunch of construction, or a bunch of IT. Don't make it too flashy. We're not artists. Don't make it too flashy, but stand out. You're going to have to stand up like our moderators here, and you're going to have to lead the meeting. Be prepared. I'm telling you, you two guys are very prepared. Thank you very much. They're prepared, all right? You need to know your stuff. Practice. Practice in front of the mirror. Practice with your boss. Practice before you get to the meeting. You're going to have a coworker. Practice. The other thing that's very interesting is something else that makes you stand out a little bit. Keep your workspace neat and tidy. Make it look like you're doing something, right? I'm kind of spread out. Got my pen out. Got my paper open. There's some spread out. But at the end of the day, pick up your boxes, pick up your tools, pick up your cables, put them back in organized fashion so that the next day you can find it. But guess what? It's just like the labs here. Everybody else uses that lab also. So your buddy's going to come in a little bit later, tomorrow or the next day, and he's going to want that one cable that you were using the other day. If you put it back where it goes, he can use it. And now everybody knows, wow, you put your stuff up, right? You stood out. You stood out. So learn more than you need to learn. Use PowerPoint. Use Excel. Be professional. Stand out. Take charge of the meeting. Speak up. The worst thing that you can do in a meeting is be very timid. So even though you're a participant in the meeting, you still got to ask questions. Challenge the guy up front. If you have a difference of opinion, challenge him. It's no longer the professor going to give you a grade again. It's your coworker that could make a mistake. That mistake does what? Costs money. So if you think he's doing it wrong, raise your hand. Okay, maybe you don't want to challenge him in that meeting, so maybe you challenge him later, right? But make your voice heard, because you're part of that, whoa, somebody said it earlier, that team. And team interaction is very important. I mean, we're here, we really haven't interacted that much as a team, but we kind of are. We're kind of playing off of each other, we're picking up on some key points, and we're going forward with that team. And if you've noticed, I've been watching all over the room. I've been trying to pick you guys out and talk to you. Same thing in a meeting. You know, if there's one person that's really paying attention and acknowledging what you're saying, you know, you can talk to them directly. But then you need to set your focus over here too. Stand out. Take charge. Be productive. Don't make mistakes. Mistakes cost money. And remember, why are we here? We're here to get a job. We're here to make money. We're here to get a raise. But if you're making a lot of mistakes that's costing a lot of money, guess where your raise is going to go? Woo! Yeah. So it's going to reach in deep in that back pocket. And you're going to feel it. Study. You know, a lot of companies, love to have you come back for a master's degree or a doctorate. You know, I'll sign up for that. There are several engineers in my facility who's got their master's, and a couple are contemplating getting their doctorate. Add. So let's say that you're a VB programmer. Add Python or TCL or C++. add. Let's say that you only lay out low-speed circuit boards. Well, you know what? On the weekend, learn how to do some differential traces that run at many gigabits. It's not that hard. Google it. MIT online has beautiful classes. Take some MIT online classes. Add. One other thing, too. Classes start at 8 o'clock, right? You show up on class on time? Well, we kind of expect you to show up on time, too, right? But one thing to stand out, show up early. Be the first guy in the parking lot. Stay late. I know we got to balance the family, and we got to balance the snowboarding, and we got to balance running, but you know what? For a few years there, show up a little early. Maybe you like working in the evenings. Stay late. Maybe you can swing in a Saturday or Sunday, and oh yeah, by the way, the boss happens to be there when you show up. He recognizes that, hey, you came in on your Saturday to work. Not every Saturday, but every once in a while. Put some extra time in. Oh yeah, we need to go to Guadalajara, Mexico. Tell your boss, hey, I got a passport. I'm ready to go. I'll be happy to go to Mexico. You know? Yeah. Poquito español. So. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. You know, that's the second thing is that, yeah, we want a raise. We want that promotion. But you kind of have to have some fun, too, you know? So you kind of got to find things in your job that make it exciting. Because I'm pretty sure that if we go around and look at all of our facilities, they all kind of look alike, right? We got a desk. We might have some cubicle fabric walls. You know, read Dilbert. Dilbert's a little bit closer to the truth than you know. All right? But we got to find some things that make it exciting. Maybe that's that extra thing that you did. All right? Maybe that's that extra piece of test equipment that you learned to use, or that extra high-speed trace that you learned to lay out that's a little bit unique to the other guys. Maybe you learned some statistical software, like Minitab. He doesn't know how to do it, but, oh, I know how. So me as the boss, guess who I'm going to ask to do it? Right? But then after a while, you got to say, yeah, you know what, boss? Oh, man, you loaded me up. I just can't get it all done. So you do have to speak up. You do have to stand out. You got to speak up. Hey, I'm not going to make this deadline. There was another question about, I don't really know the answer to that interview question. Well, a lot of times, you're not going to know how to solve a problem. Ask. There's somebody in the building that probably does. If not, Google does, right?
Thank you. We really appreciate the discussion here. It's been very helpful, and we would like to turn it over to the audience for a bit to ask a couple questions, just a couple, sorry. But feel free to jump in and discuss about the questions.
Can I mention a thing or two about transition real quick? There's a few simple things that are often missed. They are time management skills, taking notes when someone is giving you instruction, following up on the status of those items before being asked, using the phone. Call somebody. Use your voice. Do not rely on written communication and an email. You cannot control how that is received. Learn how to write professionally. Understand the executive perspective and communicate accordingly. When you are dealing with someone who you are working for, often they are dealing with many situations all at one time. So when you come to them, think like you're delivering an executive report. Hello, I'd like to discuss this issue with you. If you remember the last time we talked, or this, you asked me to do this. Give them about 2 seconds of background to get them on your page. and then roll into the details of the discussion and have some action that you are looking for already planned out. Don't be afraid to dream big. Every question, or a question I always ask is, where do you want to be? What do you want to be? And I really want to be a project manager someday, and I'm already disappointed. I want someone to say, I really want to run this company someday. So don't be afraid. You're not being brash. You're just being aggressive. That's about a couple things there.
And I wanted to ask just maybe 3 more things. You're going into a culture, just like you have a culture here at UALR in this space where you go to school. You have a culture you're going into the company. So be aware. You should go through orientation and learn those types of things, but be really sensitive to what the culture is of that organization. And also seek out mentors who can help you in your peer group, professional mentors, peer mentors, who can help you adjust and you can socialize. Participate in group activities that are outside of work, like fun days or things that you do for fun. Our team bowls, we go to horse races, we do all kinds of stuff together. And it's just good to socialize for fun, to get to know your teammates, on a personal level, not just at work, because we all rely on each other to get the work done. So don't forget social fun, don't forget culture, and don't forget mentoring is very, very important.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to remind the audience, we have a survey that's going to be coming out after we do questions. Please fill that out and give us your feedback on the great discussion tonight. Any questions, please?
Okay, well, I just got off of an interview not too long ago, and I had kind of an awkward situation come up afterwards. We had completed the interview, I felt pretty good about it, and we walked out and they had me meet another person in the company. And so I did just like I had when I met these people, and that was, looking in the eyes, giving them a firm handshake. And we get to talking for a minute, and one of the things that comes up is he asked me, so how'd the interview go with my interviewer standing right behind me? What exactly is the correct way to respond?
Yeah, I would always encourage you to compliment.
Yeah.
And you should just say, I can't speak for them, and laugh, but I can't speak for them, but, I learned, the team did a great job helping me understand the position and learn more about the company. I had a great time. If I can tell you any advice whatsoever, always, always be positive. Never, ever put down people in an interview. You'll never get hired if you do, I promise you. You'll be perceived as a negative person, someone who will tear teams apart. So never put down a faculty member, never put down a teammate. And in that situation, you make it funny and then just say, I really learned a lot. They were a great team to work with.
Yeah,
make it positive.
Just kind of lighten up the mood.
Yeah.
And, be confident about it, but at the same time, I didn't want to try and be overconfident as to make it,
One other thing is say what you learned, right? What did you learn from the interview that you just had for me, right? Maybe you pick up that I was involved with the Society of Mechanical Engineers. Talk about, hey, I'm also a member of that. Talk about what you learned that we actually do. We build a cable assembly, and it goes in a server box for Cisco. Talk about that. Then stress. Always stress, because you don't know who that guy is. He could be the CEO guy. Stress, I would really like to work here. This seems like a great company. You guys are on the ball, you're moving, you're high tech, and it seems like a great work environment. Everybody seems to be happy. Just kind of reiterate. Kind of have a plan, even if it could even be planned, because it's going to happen again. Trust me, if you came out and interviewed with us, you're going to shake somebody's hand and they're going to ask you that same question. So.
I will say that if they took the time to take you out of the room and introduce you to someone else, that's probably a good sign. They aren't going to generally walk you down the hall to meet someone else if it wasn't a good interview.
Go ahead, Carlton. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So, one thing that me and my friends have problems with is I personally, I agree with you. I prefer to have a buzzword resume, one with very, to the point list of, I know these things, this is where I've worked, and these are my achievements, very difficult. But I've also got friends who love to have that, very full resume, with those keywords like managed or teamwork or things. What do you guys look for in terms of that resume? Do you prefer a keyword, very bulleted resume, or would you want to make a little bit more? You can use both.
What did you do? That's the resume that we're looking for. What did you do? If you did manage something, say I managed it, but tell me what you did. I mean, you gotta wordsmith it. You've heard this used, wordsmithing, right? Take some of the wordiness out, right? But tell me what you did. If you were a team member, right, worked on a team, what did you do on the team? Pull that out. So let's say you built a robot and you controlled it over 3G, right? What piece of that did you do on the team? I did the programming, or I did the cellular network piece, or I did the automation control. What piece of that did you do on the team? It's good that you were on a team. What did you do?
Thank you.
I think also, as they said earlier, but I like to combine both. And I want to make sure that the position is geared toward the position that I'm recruiting for, and that it highlights, once again, it highlights your skill set. And you guys, keep in mind that your resume should be constantly improving, because if you interview with one of us and you learn something from that conversation, you have to spend too much time explaining something on your resume, rewrite it. There's not enough information there, or there's too much information there, So, use your interviews as a teaching time for you to practice your resume writing and your interview preparation. Constantly learn, constantly change it, because it's really your satisfaction, the time that you spend. Are you getting the maximum out of that resume? It's a good question.
Okay, thank you. We have time for just one more quick question.
Ask away.
I guess the most important question is, let's say you feel you've done a spot-on interview, but you didn't get the internship job. Is it appropriate to hopefully follow up and they say you didn't get it, it's appropriate to inquire why you didn't?
To me, it is. Yeah. Yeah, if I tell you that you didn't get the position, I know you're going to be disappointed, but I also want to know and say, Allison, what jobs can I apply for? Keep that momentum going, because, don't take that one rejection as we don't want you. It's just, there were 50 applicants, you weren't the strongest candidate for this particular role, but it doesn't mean we don't want you as a candidate. And you're welcome to ask me questions. I'll let you know what I can share.
I think it depends on what feedback you get in the first place. Because a lot of times I'm not going to, I get that question all the time, and I'm not going to say, because I don't want that to come back and haunt me, for number one. But if I say to you, let's stay in touch, or I'd like to consider you in the future, I'm a genuine person when I say those kind of things. So look for what they have told you to figure out what your appropriate response is. Does that make sense?
Is the question, what did I do wrong and what could I have done differently, a good question or a bad question?
I think you're assuming you didn't do well, and obviously if we brought you into the interview, you were a good candidate for the role. We could only pick one, So I wouldn't automatically assume you didn't do a good job. But if I get feedback as a recruiter that would help you and help you improve the interview process, I'm probably going to tell you that. And it's probably just that, more than likely you didn't go into more depth, or you didn't have enough experience in certain areas. So you just don't constantly feel like you're being rejected, by a company. But if you're interested in that company, keep applying, ask for other opportunities, use that recruiter to your advantage. Don't take it as a negative.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'd like to thank the panel for a wonderful evening. Let's give them a round of applause.